Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter and co-host,
Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Well, Heidi, we're going to be talking about dating after the loss of a spouse. That's kind of my pick for a show today because we've got a wonderful expert on who is head of a fabulous organization, and I want you to introduce her, Michelle Neff Hernandez, and we are going to have a lively discussion today, Heidi, about dating after loss.
Yes, and it's something that you know a little bit about too, Mom, because my father died a little over a year ago, and about a year and a half ago, and my mom has been dating. So we will talk a little bit about that and a little bit about what that's been like, and yeah, like you said, we're going to have a good discussion about it. So we are going to be here today. Joining us in the New York City studio is Michelle Neff Hernandez. Michelle is the founder and chief executive officer of Soaring Spirits International, a nonprofit organization providing peer support and programming for widowed people worldwide. Michelle started Soaring Spirits after she lost her husband, Philip, in a tragic bike accident. This community of support reaches millions today. Michelle is the author of a book that will be out in 2 months called Different After You, Rediscovering Yourself After Grief or Trauma. She has received numerous awards, including a letter of recognition from President Joe Biden, the 2021 CNN Hero Award, Simi Valley Hospital Foundation's Women of the Year Award, and many, many others. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
So good to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to have you on the show, Michelle. You know, I'll have to say, when my husband passed away a year and a half ago, I, was devastated, and I had been to some of your things before. I knew something about grief and loss and support and the widows group and all that. And you just have such a fabulous site to read things on and think about, and you're so supportive always. So that was really, really helpful for me. And I just know that I saw people at your organization, and I just recently went to one of your camps. People are so great. There's so many great workshops. There's so much hope there. There are people showing that you can get through, that you can move along, that you're going to not have this loneliness that you have for people who've lost a spouse, forever. So I really appreciate everything you do.
Oh, well, I'm so glad that you were there. And I appreciate that we have our long-standing relationship. So, I felt your loss and Heidi's loss very personally, and I was grateful that we would be able to connect around this.
It was really amazing. I was saying on the show today, Heidi and I continued to do podcasts right through, didn't we, Heidi?
After Dad died?
Yeah.
Yes. At first I was very hesitant. I was like, I don't really know if I want to do this because I don't feel like I have hope right now. And my mom did make a good point. She goes, that's why it's important to come on, so that it can normalize for people that are early on in their grief, that you don't just jump right into hope.
Right.
Right. It takes some time to get there.
I also like to call it a gritty kind of hope. I'm always describing it. It's not the shiny, far off on the top of a castle kind of hope. It's the gritty, dirty, you might want to throw it under the bed a few times because you don't want to look at it kind of hope.
I like this a lot.
Exactly.
This is good.
Well, I learned so much from my guests that I had on the show, and I'll talk about some of the things I learned, but I learned something from you where you made the comment at the conference I went to that the day that the loss happens, it's a new start.
Yeah.
And we don't want to think of it that way, right?
No, and initially I didn't want to think of it that way. When my husband died in a cycling accident, I remember waking up the next day and just thinking, I don't want to be a widow. Okay, I do not want to do this. And of course, it's not optional. But as time passed, I began to realize that on the day he died, a new life for me started, because the life that I had with him ended, and I didn't want it to end, and I wished that it hadn't ended, but the reality was that I couldn't live that life anymore. And being able to view my new start from the day of his death shaped the way I looked at the way that day as well, because it was from that point forward that I had to build something different that included him, but that no longer was going to include him physically in person. And so I needed to make something new.
Now tell us about how long did it take? You've got to tell Heidi the story of Soaring Spirits. It just blows my mind when you talk about it. Tell us how you got started.
Well, I really wanted a checklist. I wanted somebody to tell me how to be widowed because I'm a type A personality. Right. So I everyone around me was super supportive. I always think it's kind of ironic that I started a support network for widowed people because I was very well supported. I had great friends, I had a great community, my family was there 100%, but nobody was widowed and nobody knew what to do with me. When I asked them for a safe to put my husband's ashes in, they were like, is that normal?
No.
Nobody knew.
Yeah.
So I started just thinking, who would I ask? And I imagined asking other widowed people, but I didn't know where to find them. So I started asking everyone around me, do you know someone who's widowed? Do you know someone who's widowed? And would they be willing to talk to me? So I thought that I was going to write a book about that. And I interviewed 30 widowed people that first year. I would just go with my little recorder and I would ask my 50 questions. They were all very practical. Like, what did you do with their shoes? Did you put up pictures? Did you take them down? Where did you sleep in the bed? I just wanted to know how to do it. And at the end of all of those interviews, I gave myself a year to do the interviews. At the end of the year, really what I wanted was to put all those people in one room and have them interact, because I knew their stories, right? So I thought, you would be great with you, and you should talk to that person. And then I realized, like, okay, what's the likelihood I'm going to talk these 30 people into flying somewhere and meeting just because I asked them to? And then I thought, well, maybe it's anybody. Maybe this is really a community that could be built for anyone who's experienced the death of a spouse or partner. And so that was the impetus for beginning both the Camp Widow event, which was the initial idea, was to bring them together on a weekend, and then further the Soaring Spirits community as a whole.
Oh, you got to tell her about renting the Marriott.
This is everyone's favorite story. Well, when the first Camp Widow was held in San Diego in 2009, and at that time we were not. At the time I reserved the booking, we didn't have an organization yet, so I personally booked the rooms. And I was thinking, well, at that time the number was 800,000. Now it's 900 or 1.1 million, depending on who you ask. Widowed people each and every year. So I thought, okay, well, if there's 800,000 of them, probably I need about 800 rooms. So I booked 800 rooms a night.
Wow.
So I booked, I think, a total of 2,300 rooms.
Oh my gosh.
I signed for it personally.
No.
And I had no idea what I was doing. I'd been widowed like a year, and I thought that this is a great idea. And so, anyways, fast forward, the event happens, and out of those 800 rooms, 72 of them were booked. And so I had to make the choice, like, what do I do? Do I cancel, or do I, and I just couldn't cancel on those 72 people. And so we ended up being a group of 79, and thankfully for us, there was a unexpected Pride event that weekend. So the only way to get out of the hotel bookings is if the hotel sells out. And lucky for me, my hotel team had been releasing rooms. But when I walked into the hotel, we were $63,000 in the hole.
Wow.
I didn't know that, thank goodness, because I had an event to put on. And then by the end, the gap was $15,000, and I'd literally run into the sales manager and had my tribute tile in my hand. So we do these little tribute tiles for people who've died. We put them on a wall at Camp Widow. We call it the well-loved wall. It's a way of incorporating our loved one into our moving forward. And so I have my tile with my husband's picture on it, and I show it to the guy, and I say, this is my dead husband. Thank you so much for letting us have this event. And so at the end of the story is the Marriott forgave our
and now you've been there how many years?
That's
and now
amazing.
we have been there 13 years.
That's incredible. And now how many people come to the conferences?
This last one was 400.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So, we are not at 800 yet, but I have to say, knowing what I know now, 800 would be a really lot of widowed people. So 400 is a good
You're not
size.
reserving 800 rooms anymore.
We are not reserving 800 rooms anymore.
That's an amazing story of just believing that this was going to happen and putting your faith in it.
And moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're getting to dating.
Let's get into it.
Okay, how long before you dated?
3 years. I'd say it was about 3 years when I started dating. I remember I had 3 kids at home, so I had a very crazy life.
How old were your children?
When my husband died, they were 14, 13, and 11.
Wow.
So my first one was just beginning high school, her first day of high school.
Wow.
And so, and my middle one's first day of middle school was the day that Phil died. So I was trying to kind of manage life.
That's a lot.
And I knew when Phil died, even early on, I knew I was 35 and I loved being married. So I imagined that I would have a person. I couldn't imagine living my whole life without someone.
Yeah.
But I also could not imagine how in the world that would ever happen. So I had these sort of twin things. And so in the early stage, I was like, I don't have time or space for that.
Yeah.
Right. And you had this widows conference going on.
Yes, right. So then my sister was harassing me, to be honest, about whether or not I was going to date for real, because I had dated slightly. And so I started an online profile. So by that time I had people from Japan, Germany,
Wow.
Nigeria, people all over the world. And she's like, you need to delete these. And I was like, oh, all right, fine. But I'm not deleting the Australian guy. I like him. So I didn't delete the Australian guy, and I ended up marrying him.
Wow,
my
that's a
gosh.
great story.
That is
And
a
how
great
many years
story.
after Phil died did you get married?
5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yeah.
What's interesting is when my mom and I talked about doing the show, I said, yeah, this is a great idea, Mom. And you're dating, and Dad died 14 months ago or something to that effect. He died October 21st. She goes, oh, maybe we shouldn't say when he died because I'm dating. And I said, okay, this is the reason we need to say it.
Yeah,
Because I feel
absolutely.
there's a lot of judgment out there about when you should date.
Oh my gosh, so much
Like
judgment.
maybe because my dad's only been gone for 11 months, maybe she shouldn't be dating. I actually am glad she's dating. I'm really happy about it. But yes, I feel like there's judgment. It's either judgment on both ends.
Both sides, no matter what you
Right?
do, you can't do it right.
Yes.
Either you're dating too soon or you haven't dated
Yeah.
soon, and absolutely true. And the only person who knows the answer to when it's the right time for you to date is you. And as long as you're being honest with yourself about what you need and what you can bring to a relationship, what you want from a relationship, you're the only person who matters about whether or not it's time or not time to date.
Yeah.
And so that's the other fallacy, is that people think that if you're dating, oh, well, then you're all better.
Right.
I had an acquaintance say to me just before I walked down the aisle with my husband, Michael, literally just before, I'm so glad you're getting married. Now I don't have to worry about you anymore.
Wow.
Because the sense was, now that Michael was in my life, Phil was gone.
Right.
Done
And
with
the
that.
reality is
And it wasn't
Michael
gonna be
can't
painful
replace
anymore.
Phil. They're different people.
No, and it doesn't mean that I won't have pain around Phil's
Right.
death because I'm married.
Yeah.
Fast forward, say, eight-ish years, I think. Yeah. And Phil's oldest son had a child.
Wow.
And so his first grandchild. And I was married to Michael by that time,
Yep.
3 years. I come home that day crying, and he's like, what's wrong? And I was like, Phil should be here.
Yeah.
Like, he should
That
be
gives me
here for
chills.
this.
Right.
And so, it doesn't make it so that pain is gone.
Yep.
It means I'm living a different life, but Phil's always going to be part of my life. Phil's
Right.
part of my life with Michael. And, a piece of advice I give to every widowed person who wants to have a relationship with someone else is just make sure that there's still room for your person. Because, and it shouldn't be all about your person, to be clear,
Yeah.
because sometimes that gets a
Right,
little
that can
murky,
be a little
right?
heavy.
Yeah, that can be murky. But there needs to be space.
Yeah.
Because that person's always going to be a part of your life, and you cannot move forward without including them. There's too much of your history, there's too much of who you've become is tied up in having loved them and then also having grieved them.
Absolutely. I'm just wondering, Mom, what your thoughts are about this.
Well, I'll have to tell you, I got a good pass, and that is this. I was in Arizona living with my sister after Phil died, and there's a wonderful grief group in Palo Alto called CARA, and because it's only in my county, and because of COVID, they allowed me to be in the grief group from Arizona. So in that grief group was a guy named Steve Jacobs, and he plays golf and I play golf, and we run the grief, group, breaking up into groups and doing all this and I was I said to Heidi, I've talked the talk for many years and now I'm going to walk the walk, which is, what are the two things that you are
Peer
best for?
support and coping skills.
Yeah, peer support and coping skills are your number one thing. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to do. So I got in touch with Cara, and I got an individual counselor there as well as a grief support group. So I met Steve in the grief support group, and he played golf and I play golf. And he was saying during COVID he couldn't get a tea time, and I said, well, I'll be back in Palo Alto in a couple of months. I'll play golf with you. So we ended up playing golf together and kind of become a partner. And his wife died 2 2 days after Phil.
Wow.
And she had Alzheimer's, and he died of a staph infection after surgery. So we've just kind of done the journey together. It's been really interesting because he is a guy who's more open to being in a grief group. It was actually the second one he'd been in with Cara. And it was interesting because he was the only guy with a group of women. I don't think, it doesn't seem as many guys, do the grief support, but he really enjoyed it. He enjoyed talking to the women about it and was very much involved in grief support. So he was pretty, comfortable in talking about it. And as I said, we started playing golf together, and then he's met my family, and everybody pretty much likes him, don't you?
We do, and the interesting part about it, like you said, Michelle, they didn't leave Joanne and Phil, my dad, behind. When I walked in my mother's home after they'd been dating a while, on her mantle was a picture of my dad and Steve's wife, former wife, and we're both now gone, sitting there, framed. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. They're dating, and their deceased spouses are now framed right there on the fireplace. So they're incorporating, everybody, which I really liked a lot.
And he really enjoys the family. I enjoy his kids. But I was going to say to you, I was saying earlier, I got a free pass, and it's this. We would say to people, oh, we're dating. This is pretty amazing to be dating at our age and to find a partner. And he's, around the same age I am. He's actually a couple of years younger. But he said, the thing is, people would say, oh, you're dating. I'd say, we met in a grief group. His wife died and my husband died. And they're like, that is amazing. That is unbelievable. Oh, if you're in a restaurant, they tell the other waiters, that kind of thing. But I feel sorry for people where there's a divorce, and they're dating a divorcee or something. It was so obvious that people were comfortable with because both our spouses were dead.
Well, that's the interesting part. There's judgment there too. Okay, you both had deceased spouses came together because you met in a widowers group, and that was less judged than maybe another way you would meet. So
for sure,
like you said, it's hard because people are hearing a lot of chatter about what they're doing and when they're doing it.
It's also so interesting to me that people feel so passionately about whether or not we date. Because it really
are you dating a divorcee?
How did you meet?
Or is it another
Are
widower?
you dating? How long has it been? And also that just people are so invested in what they think is the right thing for widowed people. And you're fortunate that your family was supportive, because that's another piece, is that oftentimes children have a struggle. They don't want to see their other parent with a new person. And so a lot of widowed people I know have really had to struggle through the challenges of wanting to have a new partner, meeting someone they really love, and struggling to integrate that person into their family.
You're making a really good point, Michelle, because I have to be honest, at first, it was really hard because I think for me and my sisters, we were like, Dad's never coming back. Having Steve there when we would come home, and he'd be, at the house, and his car would be in our driveway, and he might be sitting at my dad's desk or just being there.
I put him in my desk.
Okay, you put him in your desk, but
we had a partner's desk. I moved over to Phil's desk and moved him over to mine because I thought that's going to be hard for the kids to come in the house and see him.
Even though he moved to a different desk, it was still hard. But we didn't sometimes tell my mother that much because we didn't want to burden her, because we were happy. We were so happy that she was happy, and Steve is such a great person. I think it was the idea that Dad can't come back now. Well, he wouldn't come back anyway.
And also just the idea of seeing her with someone else. It just, we all struggle to get used to this life after a person dies, and whatever ways they filled our lives, to see someone else in that space. And I think this is the unique piece about partner loss, is in part that another person comes in and they might have the same, let's say, so I have another husband. So when I say husband, I mean Michael, but I could mean Phila. And so the idea that that person's going to take over and be in the same spot is almost implies that they're taking that person's place. And so that trouble for widowed people is making sure that we make space ourselves for the separate people, and that it's not about replacement, it's about growth. You know,
That
and
makes sense.
growing to have enough space for both of these people in your life, in the same way that when you have a new friend and you're like, oh my gosh, I met the best new person and I love them, and then suddenly, you know, your friend table has expanded. We're used to that. What we're not used to is being able to expand our hearts for new romantic partners. There's something about that pushes people's buttons in a really unique way.
I think some of my grandkids have almost had more problems with it than my daughters.
I agree.
Yeah.
And maybe because they're younger. I don't know how
Right,
your kids were
yeah.
about bringing in, you know,
My
Michael.
kids struggled for sure. And so I have the unique experience also of being divorced. So I'm divorced from my kid's dad. Phil was their stepdad. And so when Michael came along, they were like, nope, he's not our stepdad. We have a stepdad, we only have one.
Yeah.
And so he, thankfully, is the kind of person who, I don't care what they call me. I just want to be able to be part of their lives. And so, you know, now he's their Michael. And, you know,
love it.
they have developed a really beautiful relationship, in part because he was able to allow them to struggle. They struggled with having their own feelings about, you know, they didn't want me to be alone, and they could see that he treated me well, and they felt really good about that. But they weren't sure they wanted to have a relationship because,
That's a
you know,
good
their
point.
experience was that they had lost someone.
What do you want your relationship
Yeah.
to be? They're happy to see you have it, but are they going to open their heart?
Right. And I like
him.
how Michael stepped back and didn't push it like, I'm the stepfather, I'm the stepfather. He just let it kind of naturally unfold, and now they have a name for him, my Michael, which I love.
Do. Yeah, they do. And I mean, I do want to just normalize this. It was hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blending families is hard work.
Yeah.
And I was grateful to have known that from my divorce days. So when I got divorced and Phil and I blended a family, it was hard.
Yeah.
And I think had I not had that experience when Phil died, I would have thought this thing that I was having with Michael, like maybe there's something wrong here. Like this should be easier. It's just hard.
And why isn't everybody happy?
Right. Why isn't everybody happy? And why is this so hard? But we had done it before and it was hard. And
Yeah.
it's because everyone has unique needs within the experience.
Right.
And we all have to work through what we need and understand that it may be different than
Well,
what
I
someone
remember
else
my
needs.
daughter, and I don't even know if I told my mother this, and she was 16. She's a teenager. So she said to me when she found out that my mom and Steve were dating, she goes, I am not calling Steve Grandpa. I said, you don't have to. And my
Yeah.
mom's not expecting you to, but she immediately went to that place.
Right.
Like you're saying.
Yeah.
He's not replacing my grandfather.
I've got to take him in. I've got my loyalties.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a challenge, but a couple of people on my radio our podcast really helped me. One guy came on and said he went away for 6 months or something, and he came back and he decided he was going to date. And do you remember that? Got married.
Yes.
And then we had another man on who made this comment. He said, I feel, and we usually don't like to have people who are widowed less than a year because, you know, it's really
Yeah.
hard. Remember the guy who'd only
Yes.
been widowed for about a month, and he said,
Wow.
we said, how are you doing? He had written a book, and we said, how are you doing? And he said, I am doing fine because it's my job to be happy. Because I know my wife who passed away would not be happy if I'm not happy. And so I am going to be happy. And I'll have to say before we close the show, before my husband died, he had been very ill with staph. And he said to me, I know you're going to be with somebody again. And I said, no, I'm not. And he said, yes, you are, and just don't send your tax returns home.
Here's my only requirement.
The only statement, don't send your brokerage statements home. It was so funny, and he got that big smile on his face.
Aw.
Anyway, we love them all, and we're so grateful to you. Tell us about where we get Soaring Spirits, and tell us about your book and where we find you.
Soaring Spirits International, you can find at soaringspirits.org. One thing that we do that's unique is that we welcome new partners to Camp Widow. So Camp Widow is one of our key programs, and recognizing that our widowed people are going to evolve and that evolution may include a new partner. We also offer resources for those new partners and a community for those new partners as well. So if you're dating and you think to yourself, oh, these programs are not for me, these programs are for all widowed people, no matter how long it's been, no matter what your experience is, and you'll be surprised to find that there are many people living probably a similar experience to you. So you can find all of that on soaringspirits.org. My book is called Different After You, and it is available right now for pre-sale on all of the sites. The point of the book is to help you discover who you are and build a beautiful life that's meaningful to you in the aftermath of whatever your grief experience was, whether it's a grief experience related to widowhood, a traumatic event that you've lived through, or a grief experience related to someone else close in your life. So the book is designed to help you sort of explore what that looks like, grieve what you've lost, and be able to build something beautiful for yourself.
And tell us about your camps and tell us where they are.
Camp Widow is located right now in 4 different places. 2 in the U.S. We have one in Tampa, Florida. That's the next that's the next one coming up in March. And then we have one in July in San Diego. We have one in August in Australia, and we have one in November in Toronto, Canada.
I love that you're going to Australia.
Yeah, this will be our
you've got an
second
Aussie
one.
as a husband.
Yeah,
This is awesome.
I know, yeah. And interestingly, it was not that connection that got us there,
Wow.
but it was that connection which let me get there last year. So
Love it.
Yeah, it was really
I love
good.
all the conferences you have. It's amazing.
It's been incredible. And the thing that's so wonderful about it is that we help people make connections that are going to carry them through all of their life experiences. So it starts out to be about your widowhood and your experience there, but you develop real life friendships that last a lifetime. And they're the people you go to when something hard happens. They're the person you go to when you need a cheerleader, or when something awesome's happened, or when you have met somebody and you kind of can't believe it yourself. So it's those connections, I think, as we talked about, the deep value of having a supportive community, a peer support community specifically related to what your experience is, that really helps with the healing.
I love that. And that's why I love what you do, because once the conference ends, people can take those relationships out.
Yep.
Because it gets hard when conferences end, and they can go virtual with each other, or they, with your programs virtually, or they can just call each other and they're there to support each other when they're not in the conference.
We have so many people from Camp Widow who developed a little team, and they have text message threads. And
Wow.
one of them has been going on for like 8 years.
That's amazing.
So 8 years of texts between
That's
this
fabulous.
group of women who met at Camp Widow. And so, we welcome anyone who's widowed. So I want to be really clear, we have a very inclusive view of the word widow. So any gender, any relationship, it doesn't matter if you were legally married, we even divorced people. So we've had people say they suffered through an addiction. They got divorced thinking that was going to be a way to help, make it clear that this needed to change. And then that person dies. They feel widowed, but a lot of times they're not welcome anywhere.
Right.
So
Hey,
they are welcome in
listen,
our programs.
Thank you so
love
much for
it.
being on our show today, and for being the person you are, and for all the fabulous good you're doing in the world.
So good to be here. I love you both, and Open to Hope is an incredible place.
Thank you.
We love you too, Michelle, and we are so impressed with everything that you're doing. I love how inclusive your organization is, and I think that Phil is your guiding light, both of your Phils.
Absolutely.
They are your guiding lights, and they always will be. So thank you so much for giving hope to so many around the world.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
thanks everybody for joining us on the show today. And we always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.